is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, we are back. I'd like to thank Matt Rashid for filling in for me last week.
This is true.
I gotta own it. It was my fault. Well, it wasn't really my fault. It was my palatial RFR studio here in Northeast Ohio. We had some technical difficulties, which caused my internet connection to completely shut down last week. Literally, like a half hour before the show, I'm just casually getting ready, doing show prep, and all of a sudden I realized that there's nothing's loading on. My browser's not loading any websites or anything, and I run upstairs and my son's just sitting there, as casual as can be, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, the internet's been out all day." What? You're just telling me this now? He knows it's podcast day. And the whole family knows podcast day in the house. And, so I was the last to know. But anyway, we're back. Internet is firing on all cylinders, and it's great to be with you. Thank you all for your patience. And no, it was great because we ended up releasing an episode of RFR Q&A with Matt Rashid and Jimmy Mack, and so it gives everyone a taste of what's behind the old Patreon paywall there that's available. So, huge thanks to everybody for your patience. Appreciate it. We are back. Thank you for being with us. We got some really great stories to talk about this week, including the one that all Star Wars fans are talking about, this bombshell that Adam Driver dropped to the AP as he's out promoting his latest film, that there was a Ben Solo Star Wars movie. Guys, it got as far as a script. There was a script written for this thing. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, rumors galore about getting not just the announced re-release of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, in 2027 for the 50th anniversary, but how about this? A restored version of the original theatrical release. And not just for A New Hope, but also for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So we've got some rumors and some details about that. Plus, George Lucas and Mellody Hobson, they've been interviewed recently about the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art that's going to be opening soon. And so that's very interesting. And then last but not least, of course, we lost a legend in the history of Star Wars, a legend in the history of pop culture and film, Drew Struzan, the man behind the poster. And we'll be joined later on in the program by Erik Sharkey, a friend of Rebel Force Radio, who was on quite a long time ago when he originally released his great documentary, Drew, the man behind the poster, about legendary artist Drew Struzan. So a tribute to him coming up. So lots to get through. Again, thanks for hanging out with us. Introductions are in order, and you're new to the program. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yep, we're back. Thank God we're back. I was getting kind of crazy last week not having my outlets for Star Wars talk and news and chuckles along the way. But I'm really happy we're back, especially happy that we can pay tribute to the late, great Drew Struzan and talk to Erik Sharkey, because it has been a while. Erik's a wonderful guy. He's a great documentary film director and just a wonderful Star Wars fan, the sort of guy that you would love to sit down with, have a cup of coffee, and just discuss the wars. And so we'll be catching up with Erik later in the show. I love it when we're always able to reconnect with some voices from Rebel Force Radio's past and come together, especially in situations like this, to pay tribute to the great creatives behind the Star Wars saga when it comes to the original trilogy. Of course, that was back in the 70s and 80s, and you could do the math. That was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And unfortunately, some of those great creatives from that era we're starting to lose them. And Drew Struzan was one of them. And so I'm happy that we can get together this week and pay tribute to Drew. Plus, there's so much Star Wars news happening lately. My God, this Adam Driver news had dropped this week. What a shocker.
Never saw that coming.
Oh, my God. Never. What else is going on over there?
What else aren't they telling us?
Yeah, I mean, my goodness. And why we're learning this information this week? Well, I think there's a method to the madness, my friend. And
I love when there's a theory that Jimmy Mack has to posit on the timing of this.
So we're looking at the Star Wars that could have been, the Star Wars that will be, with looking ahead to Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka Season 2, and the Star Wars that
was
placed in a, that was and is now going to be in a museum, actually, with George Lucas holding the keys. And, oh, God. You guys actually want Star Wars in the Lucas Museum? Oh
man, how about that quote?
Well, we'll get to all the quotes.
All right,
we got news headlines
right now. Let's go to the headlines.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
All right, well, yes, the first story we're going to cover this week is this AP interview that Adam Driver did, where he revealed that not only was there an idea for a Ben Solo film, but Jim, it had a director attached. Adam was attached. There was a script, and Kathleen Kennedy had given it the green light. And I mean, of all potential Star Wars projects out there, and by the way, I shouldn't bury the lead here. This film was going to take place after the events of The Rise of Skywalker. This was essentially the hunt for Ben Solo, which I sort of liken to, in the Trekverse, like the search for Spock. You had a character who died on screen, but this was about the resurrection, the return of that character. And so Adam is quoted in this article as saying that he says, I was always interested in doing another Star Wars. I'd been talking about doing another one since 2021. Kathleen had reached out. There's a clue. Kathleen's the one that reached out to Adam. And I always said, with a great director and a great story, I'd be there in a second. I love that character and loved playing him. And so
now that's very interesting.
Yeah.
If we can I can just pull the reins back just for a second and analyze and look between the lines with what's happening here. Apparently, Kathleen Kennedy makes a habit of possibly reaching out to some of these actors who have created characters in Star Wars films and TV shows, nowadays, TV shows. Maybe that's how she lured Ewan McGregor back into the mix, was by reaching out to him and asking him if he had any concepts. Maybe Ewan he was a producer, wasn't he?
He was, absolutely.
On the Kenobi film. Mm-hmm. So
he had a creative role,
the Kenobi series, I should say. Yeah. Shame that they did not offer the same sort of red carpet. They didn't roll out this red carpet to Luke freaking Skywalker, Mark Hamill. They told him to sit down, shut up, and take his medicine.
Yeah.
It's the best for the story. Well, I don't know about that, because now here we are all these years later looking back at it all, and it seems like a hot mess. I find it interesting that she brings the actors into the creative process. And again, Daisy Ridley, another one, lured back into the mix. We know for a fact it was Kathy who reached out to her. So Kathy is trying, with all of her might, to build something off of the sequel trilogy, which will always be her Star Wars legacy. Yes. The sequel trilogy will always be her Star Wars legacy. But as we're going to learn in just a few minutes as we work our way through this AP interview with Kylo Ren actor Adam Driver, who he's promoting a new film. It's like called Brother, Daughter, Mother, Sister. It's something by Jim Jarmusch. What's the name of the film? Father, Mother, Brother, Sister. No, Father, Mother, Sister, Brother.
Wow. Okay.
That's the whole family there.
Yeah.
So, but that's the film he's out promoting. I just want to give Adam a plug,
Sure.
and raise awareness that there's a new film out there with Adam Driver, because I do respect him a great deal as an actor. He was nominated for an Academy Award. He was awesome in that Spike Lee film, which the name escapes me right now, but he got nominated. He didn't win. But I think it's just a matter of time before a guy like Adam Driver takes home the gold. And, of course, Steven Soderbergh, I think he won for Traffic, if I'm not mistaken, with
Soderbergh did, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Steven Soderbergh. And as we're going to hear, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, so maybe we should dive back into the story. But I just found it fascinating that it appears Kathy Kennedy is bringing the actors into the creative process. Obviously, you can't move forward with scripts about these characters unless the actors are attached. So she's sly like a fox in that aspect.
Yeah.
But she also opens up creative avenues for these actors to actually be involved in the process of the storytelling. So Adam Driver talked to Kathy Kennedy, and she apparently psyched him up into taking the next step forward into trying to develop a new story for Kylo Ren.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, because he says that they had worked on this for 2 years, and that Kathy had reached out in 2021. And that this concept that Adam had for the film. So, like you say, Jim, this is Kathleen Kennedy reaching out to an actor who created a role and saying, yeah, what ideas do you have? Adam had an idea. He goes to Soderbergh because they had worked together in Logan Lucky back in 2017. And Soderbergh and Rebecca Blunt, who I'm not all that familiar with, they outline the story. They pitch it to Kathleen Kennedy, Carrie Beck, vice president, and according to this story, Lucasfilm chief creative officer Dave Filoni. I don't remember Dave having that title.
Oh, yeah.
Going all the way back to 2021?
Well, okay.
When did Dave get that
When did we learn about it? I mean, I think we learned about him moving up the food chain around early 2023.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, I think Dave kind of, brushed that off, saying, well, I don't know what people are so excited about. I've been in this role for at least a year now.
That's right. It was like it was made official, but he had the role for some time.
Yeah, the Lucasfilm webmaster finally updated the corporate website.
Oh, God.
And then everybody went crazy about it.
Yeah, right.
Now, Rebecca Blunt, she was also attached to Logan Lucky as a screenwriter.
Okay.
So, which is also a film Adam Driver was attached to as an actor. So we see this kind of a trilogy of creative talent from Logan Lucky now attempting to craft a Star Wars story.
Yeah. So this thing got, like I said, so far as a script, they pulled in Scott Burns. He wrote the script. Adam calls it in this piece one of the coolest blanking scripts I had ever been a part of. I mean, that's high praise. Adam's no pushover. He's a particular guy. I think he sees himself more than just he's not a blockbuster type actor. He likes to do a variety of parts, a variety of roles, getting into the nitty gritty of the characters. And so for him to say that, I think that bodes well for at least how serious this project was, how much he liked it, and what I just can't get over is they had a script. Jim, how long have we been waiting for this Rey film to get a script? They got a script for this film with Adam Driver for Ben Solo, and everything looked good until Bob Iger got involved.
Well, you have to keep in mind the Rey film, the new Jedi Order film.
Yeah.
the Daisy Ridley film, the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy film, okay, whatever you want to call it, that has had several scripts, okay?
Well, that's a good point. That's true, right.
But
There's
that
been
fruit,
rewrites, yeah.
That fruit refuses to die on the vine. And somehow, miraculously, every spring, it goes from a dead pod to living fruit once again. It's been through 3 screenwriting teams. It's still maintained its lead in Daisy. It's maintained its director in Charmin. And by the way, has Charmin Obaid-Chinoy done anything in the last several years since it was announced she was attached to this project? She's obviously not in demand by anyone anywhere in Hollywood. How is she still attached to this movie about Daisy Ridley's character that will never get made, apparently? This new Jedi Order nonsense. It's because, I'll tell you why, there are so many voices at the table right now, and there is a creative tug of war going on internally at Lucasfilm, where they aren't they have a hard time committing to a certain direction with where they want to take this character. They're using the Shawn Levy film as a springboard, but they don't want to just unleash the springboard blindly, essentially like they did with The Force Awakens, segueing into The Last Jedi, where Rian Johnson was writing a film and creating a script before The Force Awakens was ever even completed. And we know about how many changes that film went through in the editing process. So they're trying to avoid that, which is a good thing. They're being very careful and very judicious with their property. Thank you. Where was this for the sequel trilogy, where it was so ramshackle and blindfolded in the approach? So they figured out, yes, let's learn from our mistakes. Let's reel it in and make something happen. So lots of scripts floating around for that. But from what I understand, currently that Charmin Obaid-Chinoy film is very much on the back burner right now. Very much so. And I have a sense that Simon Kinberg is swooping in with his trilogy in an attempt to save the story that had been set up in the sequel trilogies and to try to develop that and build upon that. The Shawn Levy film is almost like a palate cleanser in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
That will kind of still the waters, but yet bring in some familiar with Daisy Ridley, potentially at the end. A lot of people are speculating that. She'll show up at the end. He'll drop the kid off, Flynn Gray. We don't know his character. But, I mean, if they wanted to call him Flynn Gray, that sounds like a cool Star Wars name to me.
Works for me.
Just call the character the actor's name. And then Lucasfilm will own the kid's name.
It worked for Tony Danza. Didn't he always play a guy named Tony?
He did. He did. But if they name the character Flynn Gray, that means Disney owns the name Flynn Gray. So if this kid then wants to move on and do an independent film or something for Paramount or whatever, he'd have to call himself something else. The same thing happened with Flo and Eddie from the Turtles. They had the record company owned their actual names. So they had to go out there as Flo and Eddie when their real names were like
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know what turtles you're talking about.
That's where that's a tribute. The Ninja Turtles. I don't know no Ninja Turtles. I only know Turtles. I get it. I'm talking about the rock band. Swank, why do you do that to me? So they brought in. So let's reel it back in, get away from the Daisy Ridley talk. But it appears that actual project is kind of going cold quite a bit right now.
But if you're Daisy Ridley, you're covered because you got the Kinberg trilogy that's going to resuscitate your character. So she's basically saying, all right, well, I'm not going to do this thing, but potentially I'm going to do this with Kinberg. And now I got a 3-movie deal instead of this 1-movie deal. So I think Daisy's in a pretty good spot, at least in terms of, it's almost like we called it the race for Rey. So they're all racing to do this. But getting back to Ben Solo, so according to Adam, they presented the script to Lucasfilm. He said they loved the idea. They totally understood our angle and why we were doing it, We took it to Bob Iger and Alan Bergman, and they said no. They didn't see how Ben Solo was alive, and that was that. So it was called The Hunt for Ben Solo. It was really cool, he said, but it is no more, so I can finally talk about it. And that is, I think, something that's kind of critical here. The fact that he's talking about it now says that this thing is dead. It's not happening. Now, I could have come back and maybe like a limited streaming series, or, could the idea come out in a novelization or a comic book or something, which we don't want.
No.
We don't want.
Steven Soderbergh, dude. Come on. I mean, he doesn't come into play with any of that crap you're talking about. It has to be a feature film.
I don't think it's happening if Adam can talk about it now.
Well, I think Adam might be motivated to talk about it. I think Lucasfilm is pushing Adam out there to kind of talk about it. Say, hey, go ahead.
You think so? Oh, is this
go on out there. Yeah, go on out there. Why don't you drop that out there? Because Lucasfilm clearly wanted it to happen.
Okay.
Now, let's just, before we get into all of that, all of my conspiracy theories, let's just consider the facts as they've been laid out in front of us.
All right.
And the way things went down. Adam Driver and Steven Soderbergh, along with Scott Z. Burns, who he's written films in the Bourne franchise, the Matt Damon thing.
Okay, so he's rubbed elbows with our friend Henry Gilroy.
Yeah, he's got some street cred.
Tony Gilroy. Sorry, Tony Gilroy.
Tony.
Yeah,
Don't confuse your Gilroys. Those two guys are vastly different from each other
Yes.
as far as what they provide as storytellers. So Kathleen Kennedy pushes Adam Driver to create something for Star Wars. Say, we will welcome what you bring us with open arms. And Adam doesn't mess around. He goes to Steven Soderbergh, He goes and gets some muscle,
Yeah.
He wants to make this thing real, and he wants to own it, and he wants to come back and do Ben Solo on his terms. Not this mismatch and mismanagement of two different storytellers in J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, and where there was no synchronicity between the two guys whatsoever, thus leading us to the hot mess that is the sequel trilogy. Yes. So he brings in Soderbergh. They work out for 2 years with Rebecca Blunt also attached to it. And they work on it, and Lucasfilm loves it. Carrie Beck, Filoni, it's the greatest. And Kathleen Kennedy weeping in the conference room.
It's so good, Adam.
And so they put it up. They're like, Iger's going to love this. Meanwhile, Bob Iger is sitting up there. He's like, I can't believe I'm back here at Disney having to deal with all this crap again. And we really screwed up with the streaming stuff where we threw an unlimited amount of money at it. We also got screwed over by Solo in ways that reach $100 million of loss to the Solo film. And The Rise of Skywalker, while it was profitable, didn't bring much home. So you're asking me that I'm going to drop all this money in another Star Wars movie when I can't figure out how the hell Ben Solo is alive? He disappeared as it goes. You can hear him and Bergman arguing this back and forth. Well, didn't he die at the end of the last one? I think he did. I think he turned into a Force ghost. And as we know, nobody's ever come back from nothing like that before. I don't know. I don't know. I got to admit, I didn't watch all the prequel movies. Bergman, you told me you did. Well, I don't know. I want to keep my job. Well, I'll tell you something, Bergman. This is my Bob Iger voice. I'll tell you something, Bergman. I didn't really watch him either. I had him on in the background while I was on my Peloton. Oh, no. Well, but I mean, really, like, they don't disappear and then come back to life, right? No, they don't do that. Well, then we shouldn't make this movie. Well, yeah, Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver are attached to it. Maybe, I mean, they got this far. And that's as far as they're going to get. So that was it. You know,
That
and then
was
they
it.
couldn't figure it out. I mean, that is as deep as that conversation got. And then the secretary, or I said, assistant, phoned Adam Driver and said, no, they didn't even phone Adam Driver. They phoned Lucasfilm and made Kathleen Kennedy tell Adam Driver that it ain't happening. It ain't happening.
That's a rough phone call.
Yeah. And Adam's like, geez, we spent 2 years on this thing. Now, you also have to keep in mind, if she reached out to Adam Driver in 2021, he may have not had time in his schedule to attack this project like for a year, you know, the way this guy's been working. So that kind of sets up the timeline a little bit, I think. I believe he started it with Soderbergh in the second half of 2022, and they spent 2 years on it. So this means at the end of last year, they got the rejection from Bob Iger after spending all that time on it. Meanwhile, has anyone seen a Star Wars movie in the movie theaters lately? No, I haven't. So I think it all comes down to Bob Iger and the corporate goons at Disney are licking their wounds over the loss of money from the streaming service. They dumped way too much money into those shows and did not see the ample returns they thought they would beyond things like The Mandalorian and creatively Andor. Everything else kind of landed with a thud. There was great viewer numbers for Book of Boba Fett. There was great viewer numbers for Kenobi. But after that, things really fell off the map. We know that Acolytes was hurting in the numbers. Mandalorian Season 3 didn't perform like the first couple of seasons did. Andor critical hit, but really didn't burn up the ratings charts at all. And Skeleton Crew was like the tree in the forest. You know, I mean, no one watched Skeleton Crew despite the fact it was a quality, entertaining, good time.
So the line that was given to Adam and perhaps to the Lucasfilm leadership was that Bergman and Iger just could not buy the justification for how the character came back to life. So it wasn't like a castigation of the story or in general, but they couldn't get past how the character came back to life.
Yeah.
What you're suggesting is that was maybe a convenient, because look, I mean, there were a number of plot holes in the sequel trilogy. So like to think that Bob and Alan are really, sticklers for detail and things like that. I don't know. I think I like what you're saying, where there was maybe that was the line that they delivered to the creative team to save face. But the reality is this was a business decision in the wake of these other things. And maybe they just didn't see a future in that character, despite, Adam being a hot commodity and somebody I would think that Disney would want to keep in their good graces because his future is very bright as an actor.
Now let's get into the conspiracy theory.
All right.
I think this was strategically done by Adam Driver in coordination with executives at Lucasfilm to try to rev up the fans and generate fan demand for this film. They're trying to Snyder cut this sucker and bring it into existence some way, shape, or form. They're dangling the keys in front of the babies, which are us. As we know, Lucasfilm and Disney love to infantilize the audience and treat us all like children. But I think that's what it's done.
So this is Adam, not necessarily. Is Adam working alone here in this?
No,
theory?
I think he's working in coordination with Lucasfilm.
With Lucasfilm.
The reason I feel that way is because right after this interview happened, the day after it was released, we have the Star Wars YouTube channel releasing a video clip What video clip do you think it was? It was Rey and Kylo Ren, a.k.a. Ben Solo, versus Palpatine, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker official clip. And they put it out there from, the moment Ben comes back, and it's he and Rey with sabers drawn against Palpatine. Ben wipes out the Knights of Ren and the other troopers that are there. And it goes all the way up until when Palpatine starts vacuuming the life force out of Rey and Kylo. And I just think that, or I should say Ben Skywalker or Ben Solo. Jesus, these names. So that's why we kind of need some reinforcement. I think we need the sequel trilogy the day after. We need something, because the closure that film was supposed to provide for the 9-part Star Wars saga is lacking. Oh, it is lacking. Nowadays, I'm starting to see it in a whole different way. Like, I never cared that they killed off Kylo Ren at the end of the film. I was just happy the sequel trilogy had come to an end. I really was. They could have killed all the characters a la Rogue One, and I would have been happy as a pig, and you know what? It's because I was looking at it through the eyes of a Star Wars fan who was feeling sequel fatigue and was just glad it was coming to an end. Yeah. Despite all of that, I found...
Make it stop!
Well, I found great entertainment value out of The Rise of Skywalker as well. I mean, I cried during that movie. Not the first time I saw it. The first 4 times I saw it. I mean, so I'm fully committed to this stuff. Yeah. And I was a guy who used to make fun of fans for crying at Star Wars. But, you reach certain ages in your life and you go through certain thresholds and you become more in touch with yourself.
Well,
yourself as a Star Wars fan.
did lament the fact that Adam's character died at the end of Rise of Skywalker.
I never cared.
Well, I did, because, of course, he was great. He was convincing in the role of Kylo Ren. But to be honest, I didn't necessarily see the movie star quality of Adam Driver until he turned to the light side, and we got to see the Ben Solo character, and all of a sudden, this chemistry, this charisma, everything just kind of leapt out of the screen at me. And I go, whoa, this guy is fantastic. What a great character Ben Solo is. He was this great combination of sort of a Harrison Ford, kind of maybe a little grumpy, maybe a little clumsy, with the heroic nature of a Luke Skywalker. Or of a Princess Leia. And now we're getting to see it finally realized on screen, and then he dies. And I thought, what a missed opportunity, because I still believed, as I was sitting in the theater watching this film, that at some point we were going to see these characters go on to other stories. I still believed it. I believed it then. I believe it now. It's obviously going to happen now. So I thought it was a bad choice to kill off that character. And truth be told, I thought they were going to end up together. That Rey and Kylo, Ben, were going to end up together. And they were going to start the, where Luke left off.
Well, I'll tell you what, it really put the final nail in the coffin of the sequel trilogy by killing Ben Solo.
It did.
And I think what Abrams was trying to do was he was trying to make the sequel trilogy kind of consistent with the original trilogy, in which your Darksider makes a sacrifice and dies in the process.
Yeah.
And then that connects Kylo Ren / Ben Solo to Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. It has that same sort of beat. But I mean, to me, it all feels so surface level in the sequel trilogy, because there was just more to the Vader redemption, the fact that he was trapped within that armor, and when that armor gets removed, when that helmet gets taken off, you see he's just this shriveled up potato of a guy. He's almost pathetic, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just sad, and he gave himself up for the love of his son. We're not really 100% sure why Kylo Ren sacrifices himself to save Rey. And also the inconsistency in the story itself. Rey saves Kylo earlier in the film, and she's just fine after that. But Kylo saves Rey at the end of the film, and Kylo dies.
Yeah.
There's a narrative inconsistency with that particular moment.
Which, again, is funny, given the fact that Iger and Bergman couldn't make the logical leap that this character was alive, yet stuff like that was fine.
But, I mean, there are so many loopholes with death in Star Wars.
Oh, sure.
And, of course,
Darth Maul, anyone?
We have a Darth Maul animated series, which Disney is funding. Whether or not giving it the green light made it all the way up to Bob Iger, unlikely that it did. And also that kind of points out something that we learn how business happens internally as far as the relationship between Disney and Lucasfilm goes. Kathy Kennedy, who we always place at the top of the hill. She's on top of the mountain. Yeah. The buck stops at Kathy's desk. But I don't think it does.
Apparently not.
If her decision to greenlight this film being presented by an Oscar-winning director and an Oscar-nominated actor that will actually do something to refresh Star Wars and put it back into theaters while it's been sputtering since the Solo film, and then Bob Iger says no. Obviously, Bob Iger he's signing the checks.
Sure.
So he has to have say in this stuff. But this is the same cat who also dumped like $500,000 into Leslie Headland's The Acolyte. So Adam Driver says that they were trying to be frugal as far as things like budget goes and stuff. Yeah. And there were comparisons made to The Empire Strikes Back, making it more character-driven. Handmade and character-driven are his exact quotes. But Iger said no. Bergman said no. Two of them together said no. And that's heartbreaking. The timing of this AP interview and Adam's comments, obviously they believe there still is a heartbeat at Lucasfilm in this project, and they're trying to gin up fan support. Listen to some of these comments on the Rey and Kylo Ren versus Palpatine Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker official clip post has. This one. Guys, seriously, we know what you're doing. Here's one.
Yeah.
There's another one. This is either the funniest coincidence ever or a very smart move. People are seeing right through this. Somebody else says, "What a suspicious thing to share out of nowhere." Another guy says,
"No, this thing was shared. That's crazy. I did not know that this dropped within a day of the story."
Coincidentally, or is it? Here's another comment. The Star Wars social media guy was working overtime on getting this approved overnight.
Makes me wonder what the approval process is for the Star Wars social media guy.
Sometimes I wonder that myself. Because this is sharp. I dig it. I love the timing of all of this. Here's some. Give us the hunt for Ben Solo. If Adam Driver wants to come back to Star Wars, all in caps now, you let him come back to Star Wars. Okay. But, this guy says, they trolling us.
Yeah, they are.
Disney, give us the movie with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 E's and 4 exclamation marks there at the end of that one.
You know what's going to happen to poor Adam Driver now, though, right? You realize what his fate is. He needs to go talk to Ewan McGregor because everywhere he goes now for the next 5 years at least, if not longer, people are going to say, what about that movie? You think there's a possibility? Boy, fans really got into that idea. Is there what do you think? And he's going to have to, do if my phone rings and if the...
Well, Adam's been living with this project swirling around in his head for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
It's really hard to put ourselves into his shoes, but maybe this is exactly what he wants.
Could be.
Maybe he's hell-bent on getting that damn Ben Solo film made with Steven Soderbergh.
Kylo Ren.
I'll say it. I haven't been the best boss lately. I've been a little distracted by some personal drama.
Drama is right. Days after appearing on our show, Kylo killed his dad, cut his mentor in half, fired upon his mother's spacecraft, and is now obsessed with finding a young Jedi named Rey.
Rebel Force Radio.
Okay, so you guys in the RFR audience, you couldn't keep silent about all of this, and you started flooding our inbox and our voicemail switchboard with comments, opinions, of course, big opinions. And we'd like to open up the switchboard a little bit and hear what you had to say. Who's up first, Jason?
We got Aaron. Aaron wants to weigh in on this Ben Solo project.
Hey, it's Aaron from Tampa. I'm an all-access Patreon member. Just want to hop right into the recent news that Adam Driver actually wanted to continue the character with Ben Solo, and Disney shut them down. We all know why, because obviously the character dies at the end of Rise of Skywalker. So now I see a bunch of fans being like, see, it's not Kathleen Kennedy's fault. It's not Kathleen Kennedy's fault. She liked the script. Well, it is her fault because she wanted Ben to die. She wanted Ben to die because she thought that it would make the development and character progression of Rey not as significant and important if an actual Skywalker survived for whatever reason. We think it's cooler that a person who just feels, I'm Rey Skywalker, I just feel like a Skywalker, is more of a Skywalker and deserves more of a sequelization to the character. A character who has had about the same character progression and depth as Jar Jar Binks has in the prequel trilogy. Guys, if you really think about it, they both come from nothing. One becomes a senator or politician, the other one becomes a Jedi. They even lose their semi-recent friend and mentor figure, one being Qui-Gon and the other being Han Solo. I could go into more depth about that, but won't. I think we're all just a little sad and disappointed because, when an actor is passionate about a character enough to even bring or put work and effort into creating a script for that character to continue it, and then it just gets shut down like this. I mean, Adam Driver's put more work into wanting to play the character than Daisy Ridley has into wanting to continue Rey. So it's really unfortunate. It's sad to see this happen. Disney really seems lost, and I think the Star Wars that they want is easy, digestible, not having to think very hard Star Wars, and that's just sad to see because as, diehard fans that we all are, we want meat on the bones, as Jimmy Mack says, and this would have been a movie with some meat on the bones. I mean, really quick, how would Ben survive? Well, the dyad connection. Ben does dissolve into, nothing, kind of like Kenobi and Yoda does, meaning he should pop up as a Force ghost. But he doesn't at the end of Rise of Skywalker, and we're all scratching our heads like, where did he go? Well, what if he woke up in the world between worlds and was guided by his actual grandfather, Anakin Skywalker? This is already far too long, so I'm going to cut it off short here. Love you, boys.
No.
And may the Force be with you.
Don't, Aaron. I was into the story, man. Continue. Yeah. Spin us some more yarn here. I like this.
I'm still hung up on the Rey versus Jar Jar parallels that he was throwing out there too, and he cut himself short off.
Yeah,
on that one. So you know what? If you want to just send us a couple more voicemails, one about your story process for the return of Ben Solo, from start to finish. We want to hear your fully fleshed out thoughts, and then let's rewind and look at some of those Rey and Jar Jar Binks parallels too. You said you had more of that. So, but what I'm just wondering is, he's really, really laying the whole death of Ben Solo at Kathy Kennedy's feet. as if she was the sole person to want that to happen. Now, she does run Star Wars. She does run Lucasfilm. I think Lucasfilm was as happy to see the sequel trilogy come to the end as a lot of fans were, including myself. You could just see that they had already started prioritizing The Mandalorian and streaming series.
They sure did.
At the exact same time The Rise of Skywalker was dropping, they were looking at The Mandalorian as the real golden child in the Lucasfilm portfolio.
And let us not forget that before The Rise of Skywalker even came out, they were already branding it as the end of the Skywalker saga. It was the end of the story. They were moving on to other things. So the last thing Kathleen Kennedy was worried about, or maybe the last thing she wanted, was for the son of Leia and Han to survive.
Yeah, because they're not making a clean cut then.
Right.
They're not separating themselves from the drama of the Skywalker / Solo family. They can move on and just carry on with the facade of Skywalker upon Daisy Ridley's character.
Yeah. She identifies as a Skywalker.
Right.
That's essentially what Aaron was saying. You know, you got rid of an actual Skywalker, a blood Skywalker, and now you have this kind of this poser. You know, though I get it, the whole idea of found family and all that. I'm not saying there's not a place for it, but at the sacrifice of a character that actually was a Skywalker, at least, you know, in his blood lineage. So I get that. I think that if he stayed alive as Ben Solo, I mean, let's face it, in that battle, once he shows up as Ben Solo, everyone's eyes are on him. He was such a new, exciting breath of fresh air to burst onto the scene of that film. It was like a whole new character. He wasn't like Kylo Ren at all, really. And we had already kind of been, done the Rey thing now for 3 movies. All of a sudden, you got this swashbuckling, heroic dude coming in like the cavalry. It's like, give us more of this. Give us more of this. Oh, we can't have that. No, this is the Rey story. Get rid of him.
They didn't even grant the character the dignity of having a single line of dialogue post-redemption.
That's true.
And that's the other problem some fans have with his redemption. And if Kylo Ren would have survived, how do you look past the grievous and awful things he had done? This is a man who killed his own father. And it's not just anybody. It's Han Solo. And I'm not talking the Alden Ehrenreich version. This is Harrison flippin' Ford, the real deal, the one and the only. Well, we have some more listeners who want to weigh in. And I think we'll hear from a variety of different perspectives and foundations of opinion here as we continue forward going through the RFR voicemail inbox.
Curtis from Omaha is next.
What's up, fellas? Brendan from Columbus, Ohio here. Giving you guys
wait a minute.
about...
Sorry about that.
Brendan.
That's Brendan. Wrong one. Here we go. Here's Curtis.
This is Curtis in Omaha. Ben Solo stuff. I am... Obviously, a Driver Soderbergh film would have been amazing, but I'm going to try to play devil's advocate here and agree with Disney that it is a little hard to see how Ben Solo would still be alive, and there's already been enough cheapening of the saga with lightsaber wounds not being mortal and people you think are dead are somehow back and the dead speak and all this stuff. And yes, it would have been a really cool idea, but I don't think it was squashed so much by Disney as it was by the way they decided to end The Rise of Skywalker by killing Ben Solo. So I'm kind of with Disney here. You know, they probably do, Galaxy Brain, have plans to have him come back as a spectral mentor for Rey. So, yes, it'd be cool. A lot of things would be cool that they just can't do anymore because of the choices they've made. And this is kind of the bed that they've made. So that's fine. I think it's fine. I'm glad he shared that this was possible. I guess that's it.
Well, I want to, yeah, Curtis, I understand what you're saying. I want to go back real quick to what Aaron was mentioning, which is his death was inconclusive in terms of the lore because he did disappear. He vanished a la Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, but yet they didn't close the loop on that and see a Force ghost, a Force figure. Right. I also want to know maintaining your individuality after passing on, that is super advanced. Maybe one of the most advanced things that a Force user, a Jedi, can do. I find it very hard to believe, as powerful as Kylo Ren Ben Solo was, that he would have learned that. And who would he have learned that from?
Yeah, right. I mean, who would have trained him because a Darksider cannot do that.
No.
That's been firmly established.
Right.
So it would have had to have been a light side. Now, of course, you're dealing with the lineage of the chosen one.
Okay.
So there might be some things that have been pre-programmed into some of these individuals as far as their connection with the Force goes. And also, we're only looking at it from the physical realm. Nobody has ever really said whether or not the Force itself will consume someone upon death. Maybe because of the whole Chosen One lineage, it is something in which the Force then brings people into the spiritual realm.
But Vader / Anakin himself didn't disappear upon death. His body was there in the funeral pyre.
Do we know this for a fact? Or was Luke just burning the armor? That could be.
Well, we see him take his last breaths.
Yeah, we do see that, but then it cuts away to Lando and the Falcon.
Yeah,
it's possible. No, of course. You don't want to leave that off screen.
Right.
And then, of course, we do know that Anakin Skywalker does cross over into the spiritual realm of the Force where he's able to be seen in the physical realm as a spirit. So we do know that. So I don't know, somewhere along the way, he must have disappeared. Maybe when Luke lit the flame, he disappeared, and Luke didn't even know it. The Force works in mysterious ways, my friend.
Yeah.
And that's the loophole out for anything when it comes to these kind of discussions or debates. And we definitely won't have a solid conclusion to all that tonight, so maybe we should just listen to the next voicemail.
All right. This is Brendan from Columbus.
What's up, fellas? Brendan from Columbus, Ohio here. Giving you guys a quick call about the Hunt for Ben Solo news that just dropped with the AP this week. First and foremost, I think it'd be a great movie. At least it's a great idea. When you get one of the most talented, if not the technically most talented actor that Star Wars has ever had in Adam Driver, being willing to make a movie that he's strongly behind, you make that movie. I don't understand it because why you wouldn't do it. Listen, love Harrison Ford, love Mark Hamill, of course, but through their time and the Star Wars saga, I mean, they've not wanted to come back to the series, and sometimes you have to kind of drag them back. So the fact that Adam Driver is passionate about making a Star Wars film about probably the most popular character, or at least the second most popular character from the sequel trilogy, blows my mind why they wouldn't do it. I know the reporting said that basically Bob Iger just didn't understand how Ben Solo could be alive, and that's the reason why that they didn't make the movie. I don't know if I believe that. I don't even know if that really even makes sense. It would just go to show that once again, a lot of times these executives, they think they're good at making money, but they're not good at story. And they don't understand how that could even possibly work. What I think it really comes down to is they just didn't think, they being the C-suite at Disney, didn't think that this movie would make money. And that's why it's not being made. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think this would be printing money. So anyway, guys, I hope that this is a trial balloon by Disney or a push by Adam Driver to get this movie made, and we actually get to see it one day because, listen, when you have other movies that they're trying to get scripts for, the Ray movie, and they can't, and you have a script that's ready to go, make the movie. Chat.
All right. Part of me thinks that some of this is, the allure of this is rooted in the fact that now we think we can't have it. Because I have to, even though I'm titillated by it, I think the idea of it sounds really interesting, but I'm like, do I want it because I don't think I can have it? Or do I want it, if we could go back in time to say 2023, and instead of hearing that the next project in going into theaters was Mando and Grogu, we were told that it was a Ben Solo resurrection film. I think there would be a large contingent of fandom that would be, oh my God, they need to let this sequel trilogy die.
Yes.
Oh, and then how in the world can they justify this character? He's dead. What are we doing? So it's really, really hard to judge whether or not this is legit excitement for this thing. And oh my God, they ripped defeat from the jaws of victory. They could be printing money from, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to get this? You had this, we're not going to get this?
Yeah, the tease.
Yeah.
The tease always makes you want the subject even more. And it's as Kramer would call it, it's the art of seduction. You have to do the dance.
Yes.
So it's hard to say. I mean, there are a lot of people who really, a lot of Star Wars fans who just the notion of bringing back characters like Rey, like Kylo Ren, despite even Adam Driver's growing status as one of Hollywood's top leading men, they don't want to go back there. And again, as I said, just by observing the way The Rise of Skywalker was released, lack of merch, I think Hasbro put out like 7 action figures. Oh, it is the one Star Wars property that has the least amount of merchandise attached to it as far as action figures and things like that go. It was obvious Lucas wanted it to die on the vine so they can shift everyone's focus onto the Mandalorian show, which was about 2 or 3 episodes into season 1 when The Rise of Skywalker released. It was one of those rare moments where we had 2 concurrent Star Wars events happening at the same time. And it just added to the confusion and mass chaos of our existence as fans.
It was the eruption and the emergence of Baby Yoda fever.
Yeah, right on. Right on. And quite honestly, The Rise of Skywalker, one of the most expensive films in the history of Hollywood, almost getting up to $600 million as far as budget goes. Yeah. Not counting the, British tax cuts and yada, yada. Yeah. But it was still, I mean, they threw a lot of money at this movie. And I think a lot of concepts were shifting with the wind. And I think a lot of quality acting performances and footage got thrown away in the process. Probably an entire film's worth. That's why this stuff costs so much. That's why Solo costs so much. And that's why it's Bob Iger's job to say no sometimes. Playing devil's advocate, of course. I'm of the school that, you put Steven Soderbergh and Adam Driver together, I loved Traffic. Magic Mike was okay, but, it was like, that was the movie that really put Soderbergh on the map. It put Benicio del Toro on the map. And it's a really excellent film, In many ways, I consider Traffic to be kind of a precursor to Sicario, which is another Benicio del Toro film I like. I still haven't seen the sequel because I don't want the sequel to ruin the original. But Emily Blunt, oh, what a great movie that is. Okay, enough of that tangent. I am of the school of I'd like to see this film. I like Adam Driver a lot. His cachet in Hollywood has certainly increased since 2019 and The Rise of Skywalker. I think if he's attached to another Star Wars film, I think general audiences would take it seriously. They would take it seriously. There's a star power effect in play with him. Why do you think Bob Iger said okay to Star Wars Starfighter? It wasn't because Lucasfilm was thrilled with the idea or anything. It was because Ryan Gosling was attached to it. And Bob Iger sees the value in a Ryan Gosling, especially coming off of the hot success of Barbie. So that's how things work in Hollywood. Also, there might be some personality conflicts at play here, too. Maybe Bob is sick of working with Adam's management team, or maybe Bob is sick of Steven Soderbergh for something Soderbergh once said on a yacht somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean.
I did a little research to see if there was anything known publicly, any beef between Bergman, Iger, Soderbergh, Driver. Now, this is not to say that doesn't exist, but there's just nothing public. There's just nothing that's been publicly rumored. So I think your initial thought about this just being, and what some of our callers have said, this was a pure business decision. I think that holds water. I don't think there's anything else beyond that.
Yes,
and
that's what I think.
Wanting to cut ties with that sequel trilogy.
It's interesting because when Disney acquired the Star Wars franchise, they put an end to anything having to do with the prequels. I said they had prequelitis. Cancel the Clone Wars. You want to release these films in 3D? Never.
Yeah.
And let's shut down Lucasfilm Animation while we're at it, just to ensure you're not going to keep making Clone Wars stuff. I mean, that's why we started the whole hashtag Save the Clone Wars to begin with. It was because we knew that Disney executives had a fever when they got close to the prequels. And they were encouraged by J.J. Abrams and his approach to make the sequel trilogy as close to the original trilogy as possible. Well, now that all that's backfired and they lost money, and instead of prequelitis, because they've realized Ahsoka can bring in some bucks, and instead of prequelitis, now they have sequelitis. Let's face it.
Yeah.
They've come full circle, these yahoos. They didn't want to have anything to do with George Lucas's Star Wars or the groundwork he had laid for the prequel trilogy, even to the point where the prequel trilogy was largely ignored in 97% of the sequel trilogy. It was ignored. And then now they're dissatisfied with the monster they created, the sequel trilogy. And they've seen the mayhem that they've unleashed on the fan base. And they just don't want to have nothing to do with it no more. And they want Star Wars to do something fresh and different and new and Ryan Gosling as much as possible. So that's that is the current state of affairs. And of course, The Mandalorian still has a lot of luster, I think, to Disney executives. And I believe that also was not a Lucasfilm decision. I believe to put The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters was purely a Bob Iger, Alan Bergman decision. And they told Kathleen Kennedy, make it happen.
And then if you're out there saying, well, what about the Simon Kinberg trilogy? Isn't this going to be a pickup of the sequel trilogy? First of all, that's not been confirmed. I do think that that's what it's going to be, but I think that it's going to be off into the future. I don't think that it's going to necessarily deal with and pick up the pieces and deal with the events of the sequel trilogy. I think those are Star Wars Disney characters. Let's put them in a new adventure, a new journey. And it's not necessarily, of course, they're the same characters, but I don't think that it's going to be, like I said, picking up any pieces and dealing with any plot holes or filling in any gaps of the sequel trilogy. I don't think you're going to find out who Snoke was or could have been or any of that stuff, or how Palpatine created Snoke, or any of these big plot holes from the sequel trilogy. I don't think you're going to be learning that in the Simon Kinberg trilogy.
I don't think so either. So that's the news about Adam Driver developing a Ben Solo Star Wars film, and his hard work. They developed a complete script. Maybe that'll leak online at some point, and we can read it for ourselves and really start raising a ruckus. But for now, that's all we got. Lucasfilm is moving in the direction of Star Wars Starfighter. Of course, The Mandalorian and Grogu could kind of become a sub-franchise of its own and not really, shake the boat as far as telling stories in the future beyond the sequel trilogy. So they could find a sweet spot if they try to develop into the future beyond the sequel trilogy without being tied down by the sequel trilogy. And then you have fresh Mandalorian and Grogu stories dropping in theaters every other year as well. I think that's a healthy balance. And then you could still develop things via the streaming series, Disney Plus. We know we have Ahsoka coming, but obviously we have no idea what's going to happen beyond that. So, but instead of looking to the future, let's take a second to look at the past. And I've been hearing buzz about this, Jason. But I really haven't dug beneath the surface, because I know you have some deets. You got details.
I got
about
some deets.
Original cuts of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Specifically the original Star Wars film from 1977, possibly being prepped for a theatrical release. So lay it on us.
Yeah, I think this is also going to fit in this category of leaks and conspiracies, perhaps, because the only reason we know about this is because that there are leaked screenshots that seem to have come from a Vimeo account. And you say, well, how is that possible? Well, if you don't know what Vimeo is, I mean, I'm not an expert on Vimeo, but Vimeo is a platform that's used a lot by video production companies, independent producers. It's really, I would consider it sort of like that prosumer level, where the pros use it, also consumers can use it. What makes it different from YouTube is that YouTube is all about the distribution, whereas Vimeo is about uploading high quality video footage and then being able to share it out more discreetly to various people, teams. There's even features where you can go in and make edit notes to the videos as they're being posted up there. So it has become a platform where VFX workshops and studios will upload footage and share it with various clients and things like that, so that they can review it. So
it's kind of like an industry tool.
It is a little bit more
like
of an industry tool,
YouTube,
but you could use it yourself. So these screenshots leaked. Some people are saying that this was a malfunctioning automatic upload script, which resulted in these clips being publicly uploaded. Now, I can tell you, I use Vimeo on my day job, and I too have accidentally published things to a public link versus a private link. It happens. In fact, if you're looking for examples, well, the famous Deadpool 2014 CGI test with Ryan Reynolds, and that led to all kinds of fan excitement. Give us the Deadpool movie that we've always wanted, right? So that happened. Top Gun Maverick, there were sound design tests that were leaked in 2019 from Vimeo. The 4K restoration of The Godfather from Paramount. Rough test comparisons of the restored versus unrestored scenes appeared briefly on Vimeo under an account used by the restoration vendor. So some of these boutique companies that specialize in restoration of films, they use Vimeo. So it's definitely possible. We're going to look at some of these here real quick. I've got some screenshots that I will share. The first one here, this is the famous 20th Century Fox logo. This is as it appeared in 1977. This is the version. It's very dated. Now, these are thumbnails. These aren't high resolution screen captures. So to say, definitively this is HD, 4K, whatever, we don't know. But what we do know is that these are not watermarked. These are captioned as being for internal use only. The project SW, we assume it's Star Wars, R1, maybe Reel 1, Clip 1. So if they're going to the trouble of restoring the 20th Century Fox fanfare logo, what else do they have going on? So we've got the throne room scene. This looks exactly as it did with the original release. I'm also not necessarily a forensics expert on exactly how post-special. There have been so many enhancements made. Jim, I was just watching over the weekend on an old VHS and tube TV, Empire Strikes Back Special Edition. And and then I was watching the documentary or the featurette of George talking about the special editions and why they existed. This is when in 97, when the VHSs came out, and he was talking about living with these unfinished films. And the one thing I noticed is that, and this has all been chronicled online, you can go find this, is that it obviously didn't stop with the special editions. It went from the special editions to the DVD releases, then from the DVDs to the Blu-rays, then from the Blu-rays to the 4Ks. And so they've all been tweaked over and over and over again. But what we can see here now, this one is really telling. Okay, so this is the cantina shot. This does not exist in any of the unaltered versions of the film. We've got Wolfman here, Loch Sivrak for some of you. We've got the Deveronian, the devil guy in the background. I remember this shot as a kid, seeing it, for how many years up until the special editions with this, this wormy character. As a kid, I always thought, is this Wolfman's arm? Is he like pointing back at himself? I never knew what this was. But this is do you know what this particular creature is? This worm-like creature with the tentacles?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you. I do have the action figure of that little guy, but I can't
It's
tell
a lamproid. It's a lamproid.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say that, lamproid. Yep.
Dice Ibagon is his name. And, look, everybody knows that if you get a case of lamproids, you need to put some salve on that right away because
what's
you can't
his
let
name
that
again?
Fester. Dice Ibagon.
Hickory dickory dock.
This does look restored. I mean, this looks beautiful. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen this character in that kind of detail here. I think this is one of the most compelling of all of them. What else do we got here? So we've got
also, but that Wolfman, that was one of the tiers that you needed to unlock for the Mos Eisley Cantina playset that HasLab released, and it was not unlocked.
Nope. I think we're going to get him. I think he's going to be he'll be released at retail.
I look forward to paying $50 for that one in 2032.
So this is the approach of this is R2 going through Tatooine, in the land of the Jawas. This also has been altered and changed, and this looks very, very good. Like there's been some restoration work here.
George added a different sky and panned down.
Yes.
And this one looks like the original sky, cloudy is there, the overcast sky, and it just sort of zooms in on R2.
Now we're going to venture into some territory where I think some people, Jimmy Mack loves this. This is the original formation of the X-Wings as they're on their approach to the Death Star right before the big battle. Now, George, you go back and listen to this featurette. Watch this featurette at the top of the A New Hope VHS, And man, this was one of his big bugaboos. He really did not like the way this turned out originally. He wanted to see the pilots' heads moving in those cockpits. He wanted to see a bigger barrage of X-wings. And but Jim, you're clapping for this. You're saying no. This is what I want to see.
Well, I'll tell you why. In the special edition, they have a giant fleet of 30 X-wing flying toward the Death Star. And they say, lock S-foils in attack position. And you just see all of these ships are kind of scattered about on the frame. And they're all opening up their S-foils into the X-wing shape. Okay? By the time the special edition came out, the X-wing was a fully established and fully known entity in the universe.
Right.
Of not only Star Wars, but planet Earth.
It was iconic status. Yeah.
It was iconic status. So it seemed like the ILM guys didn't care about the initial effect this had on audiences in 1977. And I can tell you this from the perspective of a kid who was sitting in a movie theater in 1977. Me. And I didn't know anything about X-Wings. I wasn't a kid who was standing in a lobby staring at the film poster and memorizing every element of it. I was just a normal kid who strolled into the theater to see Star Wars with my dad and brother. And when those X-Wings lined up one after another, after another, after another, opened up those X-Wings into attack position from front to back in succession, it made me crap my pants. I had no idea that the X-Wing could do that. I mean, they were just referred to as fighters, I think. I don't even think any... Well, I think Dodonna says, what does he say? And man your ships. Yeah, he never says, and man your X-Wing. May the Force be with you. I think he says, man your ships.
Is X-Wing stated?
Is X-Wing ever said in the original Star Wars film? That's something we need to research.
Yeah, but I don't want to say
I
right
still didn't know that these ships were going to have wings that split in half. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so
and I get thrown back into that moment, even all these years later. I was just a kid, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember how I felt and what it was like to be sitting there and see that happen for the first time. And I feel like the impact of that has been severely diminished by the special edition. So I'm so happy to see you have a freeze frame of this particular shot, all cleaned up, ready for release. I mean, what do you think the end game is with this project?
I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't think this is any kind of calculated leak. I think it's a legit leak. I think it's a legit leak on accident, happened with a small restoration company. We know that Disney does excellent restoration work on their films. Their 4K releases are phenomenal. They're great. But the question is it just Star Wars? Is it just A New Hope? Well, the answer to that is likely no, because here's a shot that was also leaked. And here we see the original Sarlacc without the beak. So this is the original battle at the side of the Sarlacc. So it's definitely not been enhanced. There's some shots. These, I don't really think these are necessarily, like I'm looking at Luke and Leia on Endor when Luke tells Leia he's got to leave and confront Vader. I don't think this is any kind of gotcha. Like this shot is in the special editions. There might be some differences in the backgrounds. I don't know. Again, not an expert, but definitely this Sarlacc shot does not exist in anything past 1997. So I think there's, and then of course, let's see, Empire Strikes Back. Oh, these Bespin shots where they've just given Cloud City all of these windows because George just wanted to see this city on the clouds. He wanted it to breathe. He wanted it to look bigger and fuller. And so this is a change of that. Also, these little pyro doodads that when they would shoot the stormtroopers prior to special edition, you would see these sparks fly. That was changed. So that's back. So here's another shot of of Lando and Leia going around the corner as they're fleeing from Imperials. Again, this has been changed to where there's windows now, so you can see outside. So George thought it looked very claustrophobic. So
yeah, I agree with that. Felt like they were running around like a medium-sized airport terminal. You know, it didn't feel like they were in a giant city in the clouds.
Yeah.
There was nothing externally to give you any reference to that. I've always preferred those special edition tweaks. The Cloud
So
City
so this is a big question because some of the tweaks that were made improved the films. We know that George, as the original creator, that's the version that he considers to be legitimate, his version. So I'm going to say, yes, I think all three are likely to be released. I don't know if they're all three going to get a theatrical release. If the other two do, it's going to be very short. But I think they're being prepped for streaming on Disney Plus. It'll be the only place that you're going to be able to see them. I don't know about a physical media release. I'm guessing that they're going to hold back on that and they're going to drive more subscribers to Disney Plus because that will be the only place that you're going to be able to see the unaltered versions, digitally restored, and all their HD glory. Again, why would they need to leak this out purposefully? They got to know that fans are going to flock back to the theaters to see this. They don't need to test the waters to see if there's interest in the original trilogy being re-released unaltered and digitally remastered. So these leaks happen. There's precedent for it. I think we're going to see all three of these films come back in their original format. I think it's because of that print that they found that they showed over in the UK. I think that's the source material or proof that they have good source material, because for a long time the line was, oh, these films have been chopped, literally cut. You know, Jim, you worked in analog. These films have literally been cut up, the original negatives cut up, chopped up to make the special editions, make subsequent releases. And it seems that maybe they finally got a really good print that they could use to restore.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. The people who saw it in London, Kathy Kennedy was there to introduce it herself. So this was no sort of like underground kind of production going on there. And also keep in mind that several months ago it was announced that Star Wars will be re-released in 2027 for the 50th anniversary. I think that they will release this version and we will be able to see it theatrically. And then it'll land on Disney Plus, like you said, maybe with the other two films, or maybe they'll just sit on those restorations and save them for their appropriate 50th anniversaries. So.
This is my personal favorite screenshot. We've got Greedo with the original dialogue. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. The original font for those subtitles, and I think Han will indeed shoot first once more in theaters in 2027.
Yeah. And you better be there opening night when that happens, because that crowd's going to go crazy when Han shoots first. I got to be there for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So looking forward to it. It's long overdue. And just as far as preserving cinema history, I think it's very important that we preserve the original edit of Star Wars as it was seen in theaters back in 1977. And I don't want to get that debate with you people about, oh, well, which version, the 35 millimeter or the 70 millimeter, the this dub, that dub, the 1979 release. No. Just whatever we think we saw in the theaters back in 1977 is fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't care which one it is. Pick one. I didn't know the difference back in 77. Every time I went to the theater to see Star Wars, it didn't matter what kind of print it was or what year it was. I felt like I was always seeing the same film.
Same movie, right.
So come on, let's get over the nitpicking and just release the damn thing just to preserve the history of filmmaking. And then let George have all of his special editions he wants. My God, there's probably, how many of them are? There's like 5 of them now. So.
At least. And I don't think this changes canon. I don't think releasing this to the theater all of a sudden reverses any of the canonical changes that have been made. You're right. This is about history preservation, nostalgia, experience, and just for the people that want to see it the way they remembered it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, it's Mark Hamill, that Skywalker guy from those space movies.
Rebel Force Radio.
Force yourself to listen.
We were just talking about the original Star Wars from 1977. Well, let's go to the maker himself, George Lucas. He's finally doing some marketing for this damn museum of his we've been hearing about for the last decade. He did a terrible job marketing it to the Chicago area. He never once did an interview to talk about what's going to be in the museum. His designs for the museum here in Chicago made pundits say it looked like the Michelin Man took a dump on the shores of Lake Michigan, or Mr. Stay Puffed, dropped a deuce right next to Soldier Field. That's what they said about the design of his museum, and nobody understood it. I did. I fought for the museum, but there was a activist group called the Friends of the Park, which applied so much pressure to Lucas that he packed up, moved out of Chicago, and L.A., of course, accepting the Lucas Museum with open arms. And I think that was George's end game all along. I think he was just dicking around with San Francisco, dicking around with Chicago for sure. But I think he did originally want to put it in San Francisco. When he couldn't, he toyed around with the idea of putting it in Chicago. The city was behind it. George made $25 million donations to the Chicago public school system to kind of, grease the skids a little bit, get his museum built. But it was an activist group, not the city of Chicago, which denied the city of the Lucas Museum, and now it's showing up in L.A. It looks like 3 times the size of the thing they were proposing for Chicago, and it looks absolutely massive, but to me there are elements of this thing which seem extremely cold and sterile. Some of the photos I've seen of these exhibits. Well, but you can't say that about the man because he has exquisite taste. You've been to Skywalker Ranch. You've been to the Lucasfilm headquarters. You've seen what he does. Yeah. He embraces the best of the old. In his own home, he lived in he still does live in this Victorian mansion. He wanted authenticity in that house, to the point of where he had toilets from like the late 1800s
but
installed,
the problem with that
with the pull chain and everything.
That's old school George. I think George has changed a lot. And the cold and sterile, that was more about George himself and not necessarily his taste in architecture. I just feel like, he's old. And he comes across, I think, these days as a little sour. And so I'm not particularly inspired when I see this. It looks like something that Apple would build.
Yes. Great point, man. Great point. And maybe he's feeding off that a little bit. But he recently did a little thing with the Wall Street Journal magazine, gave a tour of the still under construction museum in L.A. with his wife, Mellody Hobson. And there were a few quotes from the article itself in the magazine from George. And then Mellody actually did an on-camera interview about the museum itself. And it's like the most extensive I've ever heard Mellody Hobson discuss Star Wars, second only to the time when I talked to her about Star Wars back in 2009 at a fundraiser for the Gene Siskel Center of Film here in Chicago. And I know, Steve Sansweet said, "You got Mellody Hobson talking on the record about Star Wars." I said, "Yes, I did." He goes, "You're the only person to have ever done that." Okay, but that was back then. So now Mellody, she's got a museum to sell, so she's talking the wars. She's even wearing a Rebel insignia on her.
She is
with her brooches. You see it there.
The warbird
in the photo. You see it. Yes, the same symbol on Luke Skywalker's X-wing pilot helmet. She's wearing it. So we have quotes from George first before we get to the Mellody stuff. The first question they ask him is, George, what's the purpose of this museum you've been working on for the last decade plus?
Making a museum for what I call the orphaned arts, the art people respond to in the real world. Okay, which is kind of a downer. The orphaned arts.
well, he expands on that a little bit.
The art inside has always been thrown in the garbage, literally. And so we're trying to say this art is important. Let's put it in an important building. Okay,
important. Yeah. Well, he's talking about like comic book art, newspaper strip art, magazine artwork from guys like Rockwell, etc. And he's just saying that none of this stuff got its due, and now it's worth a fortune, and I'm going to build a museum to it.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, I would say Rockwell has probably been pretty well idolized and put in the pantheon of great artists.
I know that, but I'll tell you what. Here in Chicago at the Art Institute, I hear about the Monet exhibit coming to town, but I've never heard about a Norman Rockwell art exhibit at any of these esteemed establishments. So.
Well, you're right. It certainly doesn't get the same. Yeah, it doesn't get the same. But no, I get it. It's pop art to a lot of people, but to George, it's real art.
Like in Mad, he has stuff from Mad Magazine. It's, so this is gonna be a wacky museum.
Yeah, but is there going to be any Star Wars in it? That's what everybody wants to know.
Yeah, George, what's the deal with that? Do you have any Star Wars in this place?
It's one gallery out of 33, and I did it grudgingly. He said he chuckles after that.
Yeah.
I didn't want people to come to the museum and say, "Where's the Star Wars?" Which that's what we would have said immediately. We walked into that place. We wouldn't have gotten any further than the front lobby and said, "Where's the Star Wars?" But out of 33 galleries, George found room for one, George Lucas, one for Star Wars. And he says he did it grudgingly.
What the hell is that all about? He doesn't even want to honor and respect his own history and his own contribution to the arts, which has been significant and which he himself has meticulously saved in this archive building on Skywalker Ranch, which I thought, he was going to empty the archive building and flood the museum with all of his Star Wars stuff, along with all the other artwork he's had hidden away in a couple of warehouses forever. But no, it doesn't appear to be that way. It appears that he's going to own one gallery out of 33. And it's odd, though, they did release some photos of what some of these exhibits are going to look like at New York Comic Con.
Right.
And I was very unimpressed with the sterile nature of the displays, where it was like in these, like you said, very Apple-inspired, all-white rooms with a pod racer up on the wall,
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little more immersive environment that puts you into the Star Wars universe. But George thinks that that's for chumps, I think his relationship with Star Wars has become much more complicated in the wake of the Disney ownership than we realize. Almost to the point where George is probably operating under a sense of denial to a certain degree these days. To a certain degree.
I mean, look, what we learned from the Icons Unearthed interviews with Marsha Lucas was that when George turns his back on you, he really turns his back on you.
That's right.
You're dead. It's over. And when I read these two quotes, that was the first thing I thought of. Star Wars is now George's ex-wife.
Yeah. Right.
And anything he's doing with respect to Star Wars is out of obligation He's doing it, in his own words, grudgingly, and because he knows that that's what he's recognized for. And if anyone has any dreams of this museum, I work in the arts, and I work very closely with people who run museums all over the country. And I know how in bad shape museums are in terms of memberships and attendance. And if they have any hope of this thing being a success and being able to sustain the size of it and what it's going to cost to run this thing with employees, et cetera, they better embrace the Star Wars real fast. And I won't be a bit surprised if that one gallery turns into 2, 3, 4, 5 galleries of Star Wars stuff. Because in order to get feet in the door, you're going to need to embrace the Star Wars. I think George is kidding himself.
Yeah. And like I said at the top of this story here, he's really screwed up with the marketing of this thing every step.
Oh, he hates marketing. He hates marketing. For a guy who loves commercial art and pop art, I don't think he has much respect for marketing.
Well, they finally do get him to talk a little bit about Star Wars.
Oh,
well,
great.
no, I'm sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a fair observation
Yeah.
to make. It's just nothing I ever considered because, I mean, marketing will make or break anything you do.
It's a
But
necessary
I guess
evil
to George,
in his mind.
but to George, it means having to deal with Hollywood execs who don't know anything, and I mean, so they do get George to kind of discuss what his relationship is like with Star Wars these days, what with Disney owning the brand, and they're making the Star Wars now. So how does George, how do you feel about all that?
Well, Disney took it over, and they gave it their vision. That's what happens. Of course, I've moved past it. I mean, I've got a life. I'm building a museum. A museum is harder than making movies. Mm-hmm. He really sounds like a petulant little child here. I idolize the man. I really do. But this is a very disappointing side of George, a very disappointing era of George. Disney did not take over Star Wars. George, you sold it to Disney. There was no takeover.
Yeah.
You chose.
Yeah, and
you walked away with $4.25 billion.
And he manipulated that situation every step of the way, hiring Kathleen Kennedy because believing she will have his back when the sale goes down to Disney, but keeping her in the dark about the sale to Disney, keeping Bob Iger in the dark about Star Wars productions in the pipeline, which there were none until George realized he couldn't get Pixar-type dollars for Lucasfilm unless he actually did have stuff in the pipeline. So mysteriously, a sequel trilogy started to be getting developed. Oh, but that was always in the works, according to George. No, it was just his way of getting top dollar.
Right.
In his way of but he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He thought he could get that top dollar by selling to Disney while still being involved in a leadership role in the Star Wars realm.
A creative leadership role.
He thought Kathy Kennedy had his back. Disney made it very clear to Kennedy that in no way, shape, or form are they going to drop $4 billion on Star Wars or whatever that number was to only have partial control of it. They wanted 100% control of the franchise and the property and everything having to do with it. So George was shown the door, essentially, in a very manipulative way. It's both of these guys, Iger
Swimming
and Lucas.
with sharks.
Yes, swimming with sharks. And if you swim with a shark, sooner or later, you're going to get bit. And Bob got bit by George, and Bob bit back at George, too. And meanwhile, Kathleen Kennedy's in the middle of this whole thing, really. I think Kathy Kennedy was really on board with keeping George Lucas around. I mean, that's a perfect safety net for her.
Sure.
Well, why did that work, Kathy? Well, this is George's vision, of course, I mean, she thought this was the perfect situation to be in, and then all of a sudden she found herself in a little bit over her head without George Lucas's protection. So it's harder than making movies.
I don't really like the, I've got a lifeline, that's just, to me, that kind of craps on the fans a little bit and sort of, implies that if Star Wars is a part of your life, that you don't have a life. I don't think
that's,
but
that's not what he's saying. He's saying he's embraced a new era of his life, and that era is the museum. And he is living in denial. He's kidding himself if he thinks people are going to flood into the George Lucas Museum to not see Star Wars stuff.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. We shall watch the Star Wars presence, the footprint of Star Wars in this building grow from one gallery out of 33 to 15, 16 out of 33, whatever gets the people in the doors.
Yeah, for sure. So what about Mellody? So Mellody went on the record. Thankfully, I don't have to do a Mellody Hobson voice. We've actually got audio of Mellody. These are short little clips. I noticed that. So not very verbose, but still nonetheless.
Well, no, I cut around the crap, I just got to the meat.
Yeah,
I'm going right into the meat. They ask her all kind of interesting questions about her life and her career and things that don't necessarily apply to Star Wars or George or the museum. So I got right to the point with some of this stuff.
All right. So what do we got first?
Well, the first clip, Mellody talks about when she and George started working on the museum, how it really sort of originates in the first place.
We've been working on this project together basically as long as I've known him. George had decided that he was going to build a museum a very long time ago. He's the curator of the art that's in the building from his collection that he's been working on for 50 years. The idea was really prompted by George believing that there are illustrators and artists who are not celebrated to the extent that they should be.
Yeah, so that's fair. He wants to reward the creatives that have inspired him and who he's a fan of, and give them maybe more of the spotlight than they would traditionally get in your typical art museum.
Yeah, a guy like Drew Struzan, maybe.
Yeah, a guy like Drew Struzan or some of the great artists from Mad Magazine like Al Jaffe or Mort Drucker, or always back again to the Norman Rockwell, because
right.
But I mean, it's always said that George has like the largest personal collection of Rockwells, and also it's also said he has the world's largest collection of international film posters.
Yeah,
and that stuff he has hanging up all over the walls of Skywalker Ranch and the Presidio facility. So Mellody continues to talk to Wall Street Journal magazine about she lays down her description of the museum itself.
I feel like I'm stepping inside of George's mind. Very cool, very creative, unexpected, really precise. So much of the detail is not obvious to you. Just like Star Wars, just like all the things that he's worked on, the detail is so nuanced. I love the fact that on the first floor, there are no corners. A lot of the building is round. There are no edges. That was very hard to do. There's a softness to this gigantic structure.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds to me like something you'd have heard from Steve Jobs when he was describing that new campus that they put out. There's no edges. There's no corners. It's all smooth. It's all round. Right. Okay. I mean, great. If you hate edges and corners, you're going to be real happy to be there.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with them myself, but
the things that get prioritized after this project was kicked out of 2 cities prior to it landing in LA, and they have to have round corners. Whatever. That sounds like a real trip, lady. Have fun with that. So now we actually hear Mellody talk about Star Wars, and she's asked, does she have a favorite Star Wars film? What do you think she's going to say?
I don't have a favorite film of George's.
Of course
I see so much in each one. Last night I went to see John Williams at the Hollywood Bowl, and they were doing Star Wars, and I've listened to the score so many times. It's so, you get goosebumps when you hear that opening. Just thinking about the fact that he could pull all of that together was something that continues to just be magical, even for me, and I get to live with him.
He's pulling off some kind of magic.
Imagine watching one of the movies with him. You're sitting on the couch, George has got the white socks up in the air there, and he's like, oh, you have no idea what a pain in the ass this was. And that guy. And then this problem and that problem and I can just. It was just nothing probably but gripes and groans and.
Can't enjoy himself, No,
never.
He probably just gets up and brushes the Cheeto dust off his shirt and walks out. That's what I think happens. But let's keep it within the wars. Melody's, this is kind of fun. Mellody is asked, what was the best advice Yoda ever gave? And here's her answer.
Yoda's best advice is do or do not. There is no try. And that is something that is a refrain in my life. Most people, they're constantly trying to explain. They're constantly making excuses. There is no try. You either did it or you didn't. And that is an anchor for me in my brain.
There it is.
Okay. Well, there it is.
She doesn't take anything halfway, She wants 100%.
I want to hear Mellody take the Yoda questionnaire. That's what I want.
Maybe someday.
I saw Star Wars, and I'm not a movie expert, but I think it's safe to say it was the greatest film of all time.
Rebel Force Radio.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We lost Drew Struzan.
Yes, we did.
And it's a shame he passed. The king of the movie poster has died. Beloved artist Drew Struzan. He passed away. The guy who created iconic posters for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and beyond. 78 years old.
Yeah.
There's so many great things that can be said about Drew and his life. And we have a friend of ours, Erik Sharkey, who is the director of the Drew Struzan documentary, Drew, the Man Behind the Poster. It was released in 2012, I believe. And we had Drew join us on RFR to promote that documentary. And we have a couple of clips from that if we want to, look back at the past and hear a little bit of Drew. Let's go with Drew Struzan on drawing Harrison Ford. Okay, that, Drew had drawn Harrison Ford many times on Star Wars posters, on Blade Runner posters, and on Indiana Jones posters. And it seemed like the two of them kind of sort of had a connection that way. And they actually do have a reunion in the Drew Struzan documentary, directed by Erik Sharkey. Erik's coming up here in just a few minutes, and he's going to share some memories of Drew. But first, let's hear from the man himself. Here's Drew Struzan on Rebel Force Radio talking about drawing Harrison Ford.
Drew, is it true that you have drawn Harrison Ford more than any other actor?
In my career?
Yeah.
I would say so. I had great opportunity on at least two of the films. Between Star Wars and Indiana Jones, I've been drawing them for years and years and years.
And so you're familiar with every wrinkle, every little hair, every follicle, right, on Harrison. And you've watched him, age and mature, and all the way up through. What's that?
That sounds nasty.
Sounds nasty, he says to you, Jason.
Well, when you put it that way, geez.
So, Drew, what a great guy, creative artist, a very down-to-earth kind of guy. He talked to us also about what his favorite Star Wars film and favorite Star Wars poster was, and I think he had a hard time answering that question, much like Mellody Hobson can't tell you what her favorite Star Wars film is.
We always come down to that question, don't we? What's your favorite?
Absolutely.
I always say I can't, and I don't have a favorite. If I had a favorite, I'd be stuck in my tracks, I wouldn't still be looking to the future to see what's new and what's different and what's grand. And if I had a favorite, then how could I ever be happy doing anything but that? So I really don't have favorites. I have so many things I love and I like and I cherish the experience, but it can't be the only one that ever turned me on. So
you worry about getting pigeonholed is what you're saying. You don't
want one way of saying it, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting way of putting it.
Nature and my purpose is to be creative. So it's the exact opposite.
So constant expansion is what you're saying. You never want to get bogged down in one specific area.
Yeah, I'm always changing.
Yeah. Well, that's what true creatives do.
Yes.
A true creative will never be satisfied because there's always more to create.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I really grasped all those years ago what he meant by not having a favorite, but hearing it now with a little more miles on my tires, I get it and I dig it. I like what he's saying.
Well, man, he certainly was a great talent and one of my favorite Star Wars artists. I'll put him up there with Ralph McQuarrie, Joe Johnston, you name him.
Yeah, for sure.
He was one of the best of the best. And I don't know, is Erik standing by? Is he ready to jump in and pay a little tribute to the late, great Drew Struzan? This is a friend of Rebel Force Radio. Documentary director Erik Sharkey. He is known for his documentary Drew, the Man Behind the Poster. And let's check in with Erik and see how he's doing. Oh, there
Erik.
he is.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me and for honoring Drew.
There are a few people probably that we could get on Rebel Force Radio that could offer better perspective on the life and the legacy of Drew Struzan than someone like yourself that covered him in the documentary, Drew, the Man Behind the Poster. It's been 13 years since we last spoke to you. So remind Rebel Force Radio listeners how that project started, like what drew you, no pun intended, but what attracted you to Drew Struzan's art and making him the subject of a documentary.
Oh, well, like many people of our generation, I grew up on Drew Struzan's amazing movie posters. So when I was a kid, to me, the movie theater lobby was like an art gallery because you had all these incredible painted movie posters. And I noticed that all of my favorite posters and all of my favorite movies growing up had the same thing in common, which is Drew Struzan. I grew up loving Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Back to the Future. And Drew did all of those iconic posters. So when I finally directed my first feature film, my dream was not only to direct a movie, but to have Drew Struzan do the poster. So those dreams went hand in hand. Direct a movie and have a Drew Struzan poster. Now, my first movie was this low-budget, silly comedy called Pop Star Private Eye. It's about a pop star who is also a private detective who has to stop an evil robot boy band created by Adam West. And Adam West is in the film. And Davy Jones from the Monkees sang the theme song, so it's super camp.
All right, I'm adding that to my Netflix queue right now. You had me at Adam West and Davy Jones.
Where can we see that one, Erik? Can we see it on Netflix? Where can we see it?
Well, you can see it where all cheesy B movies end up. Tubi TV.
All right. Well, we'll find it on Tubi for sure.
Definitely. But so when I made this film, I reached out to Drew. And back then, you could reach out to him just through his website. It was a different time. And so I emailed him and told him about my movie and how I would love to have him do the poster. And of course, he said no, which I respected. I had this silly little movie. But then I said, would it be all right if I just called you and talked to you? Because I am such a fan. And even if you say no after our conversation, it would just be a dream come true just to talk to you and discuss it. And he said, yes. He gave me his phone number. And we talked, and I told him about how my dream was always to have a Drew Struzan poster for my movie and how I grew up on his posters. And I said that I will not bug you for changes. I will be the best client in the world. I will just give you what I'm looking for, and you can paint whatever you want. Well, I guess that got through to him because he said yes. I was shocked. He said, yes, I'll do your poster, which I was blown away because it was my dream come true. But that's what a kind and generous man he is. But he said, I only have one stipulation. You have to wait 2 months because I have to finish the poster for Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. And I went, I can wait. I can wait. Yeah, that's more important.
Are you sure? Priorities? I don't know. That's amazing. And with Drew, and we're paying tribute to Drew here tonight. And we're so glad that you were able to join us for this, Erik. I mean, seriously, as a guy who worked with Drew, I mean, obviously your relationship blossomed after that initial phone call and then the collaboration on the film poster. And you ended up doing that documentary. Oh, Jason has
there it is.
The Pop Star Private Eye poster that Drew Struzan did. And man, that's a good one. Of course, he didn't phone it in. I'll tell you that.
No.
That ranks up there with any good Drew Struzan poster or album cover or what.
That's the amazing thing about Drew, because he's done a lot of posters for movies that were pretty terrible. I mean, movies like Meatballs 3 and Sahara with Brooke Shields, but he makes you want to see that movie. You see that artwork, and he makes it look like it's the best movie you're ever going to see. And so, I've rented some stinkers because of great VHS covers done by Drew.
And then, of course, he did a lot of cover art for things like Star Wars Expanded Universe novels. Mm-hmm. And what I really enjoyed about Drew's take on some of those novels is that he was portraying the characters seen through the lens of 10 to 20 years in the future. So he was kind of creating a different look for the very familiar characters while still maintaining all of their standard trademark looks. And he said he didn't look at the actors as they were aging. He just, in his mind, created an aged look for some, and in some cases, cosmetically speaking, he did a better job than the actors themselves at aging, as far as the way he aged the characters.
Yeah, Drew has done a lot of Star Wars work over the years. You are right, not just these iconic movie posters, but book covers and soundtrack covers and comic book covers and merchandising. I mean, there is so much great Drew Star Wars artwork out there. Yeah.
You would have thought, given that he created these incredible, iconic is an overused word, but in the case of Drew, I think it's an understatement. These iconic movie posters. It's interesting to me that he also did some of the merchandise and the tie-in materials and things like that, so that he really permeated these franchises, especially Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Did he ever talk to you about why he... I'm guessing it was work, right? An artist needs to work. An artist needs to paint and draw. But why he picked up, some of those other jobs like book covers and merchandise packaging and things like that?
Well, Drew always made it clear that he's extremely grateful to George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. But George Lucas constantly hired him. Drew is just an artist that George loved. He loved his talent. George Lucas, when he was younger, at one point wanted to be an illustrator. So he's just somebody who loves illustration. So if you see Star Wars artwork throughout the years when George ran Lucasfilm, you'll see not just Drew, who is the person he used the most, but you see other great artists like Roger Castell or the Hildebrand brothers or Alvin. He hired really the best of the best illustrators. And Drew is just... really his main go-to guy. He was the guy that he hired the most. And so even when illustrated posters went out of fashion, like when he did the prequel posters, at that time, pretty much every studio was using Photoshop. But George Lucas said, no, I want a classic Drew Struzan illustrated poster.
Kind of runs parallel to the story of Lawrence Noble, who George Lucas would always tap on when he wanted some sculpting done. He had these favorite artists, and one of the most famous artists that's ever worked on Star Wars, of course, was Ralph McQuarrie.
Yep.
We always kind of had a knowledge of Ralph because of those trading cards that Topps put out back in the Empire Strikes Back era. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were Ralph McQuarrie. They gave Ralph full credit there and featured his concept artwork on these trading cards. And to me, that pushed him and his artwork and his then legacy into the stratosphere. It just seemed like we watched Ralph McQuarrie and the acceptance of him and the knowledge of him among the fan base really grow over the years. When do you think that same effect happened to Drew? Because for the longest time, we were looking at his artwork, but really not connecting the name to Drew Struzan. Do you think maybe it could have been your documentary that really pushed knowledge of him into the mainstream?
I think what the interesting thing about Drew is that everybody knows the artwork. I mean, you can't tell me a person who hasn't seen the Back to the Future posters or one of his Star Wars posters or his poster for John Carpenter's The Thing or the Muppet movie. I mean, it's too many iconic posters to even count. But I think a lot of times, unfortunately, with illustration, people don't often put a name to the artwork. Sort of like everyone's heard of Picasso, but I'll tell you, most people have never actually seen a Picasso painting. They just know the name. Whereas it's the exact opposite with Drew. Everybody knows the artwork. So what I wanted to do with my documentary is put a face and a name to the artwork and say, here's this man who painted all of this stuff we grew up on. He is this massive part of pop culture history, of film history, in terms of his artwork being associated with those films. I mean, when I think of Back to the Future, I think of Michael J. Fox looking at his watch in that poster, and that's not even a scene in the movie.
Of course.
So he added to the iconography of these movies, and so I just wanted people to know, no, there is a man named Drew Struzan who is incredibly talented, who painted all of these posters that we grew up with and love and associate with these movies that we love.
Some of the imagery in these posters almost became associated with the films in a way a logo becomes associated with a product. You see it and you instantly know what it is. When I think about John Carpenter's The Thing, with the head and the lights coming out of it, that's almost logofying the artwork. When you see it, you know what it is. You don't need anybody to explain it to you. And his artwork had that presence to it. What else I liked about his artwork is the very realistic style in which he approached his characters and the subject matter of a lot of these posters. He had a real eye for realism, and it comes through. You get the attitude of Harrison Ford coming through loud and clear in some of those Indiana Jones posters. You just feel the presence of the actors. When you see like Sean Connery, you see his eyes and the expression he's making. Drew captured that in such a way. It's simply sublime. And the colors he used really made the posters pop. And he sort of had this way of putting the characters and key moments of the film into this collage type format that really told a story in itself without even having seen the accompanying film. You get a real grasp for what the film is all about. And I think that has to be the goal of anybody who creates poster art. And Drew Struzan put on a masterclass.
Yeah, Drew always said that he was trying to capture the feeling of a movie. So he wanted, when you saw a Star Wars poster, he wanted you to feel Star Wars, that you're in that world of Star Wars, that you feel the excitement and the adventure of it. Or if he's doing a horror movie like The Thing, he wants to have that sense of mystery and terror. Or even in like comedies, like the Police Academy movies, he wants you to laugh and feel the silliness of the characters. You know what I mean? So he's trying to capture the feeling of that movie. And you're right. I mean, the way he captures likenesses, I mean, he constantly talks about how Harrison Ford is the person he has painted the most in his life. Between Star Wars, Blade Runner, and Indiana Jones, he's painted Harrison Ford a ton of times. And he captures the essence of those characters. You see the performance in the painting. You see behind the eyes and the intention behind the eyes. And the fact that he can do that all with a paintbrush is really incredible.
Yes. Yeah, I like that. Well, there's a great moment in the documentary where Drew actually meets Harrison Ford for the very first time after decades of staring at his face and painting him. And one thing about Harrison is he really does respect the whole picture of filmmaking. Everyone from the grips all the way up to the directors, the composers, and he was giving Drew a whole lot of credit and had, throughout his career. But there's something, I think, not to split hairs, but it's like Drew wasn't drawing Harrison Ford. He was drawing Han Solo. He was drawing Indiana Jones. And that's something that wasn't lost on his subjects like Harrison Ford, who recognized that he was as much, illustrating and showing the character, an idealized version of that character, just like the actor was in some ways.
No, you're absolutely right. He's capturing the character, and he's trying to capture the tone of that character, the personality of that character, the motivation of that character. And like Steven Spielberg says in the documentary that, movies, you have 24 frames a second to do that. But with a painting, you have one frame to do that. So the fact that he can convey that much about a character while capturing the likeness beautifully and while giving you a sense of the tone and the feeling of a film and bringing all that together is pretty incredible. And his composition skills are amazing. One thing you'll see in a lot of illustrated posters these days is the compositions are really crowded. Like they try to get 100 characters in there. And that could be a bit disorientating on the eyes. And yet with Drew's paintings, even if there's a lot going on, your eye takes it all in. And you look around the painting and it doesn't bombard you. It pulls you in. And his composition skills are incredible.
Absolutely. You got to know Drew. And you worked with him. I mean, it went beyond just a fan reaching out and having a simple conversation. You guys developed a real relationship. What is the one thing about Drew Struzan you want us to know that we might not know?
Oh, that he's just such a kind and generous and thoughtful person. I mean, he was just an incredibly good man. I mean, he was an incredible artist. He's an incredible husband to his wife, Dylan, incredible father to his son, Christian. He was so kind and generous to all his friends. I mean, he even did the poster for the documentary I made after the Drew Struzan documentary, which was about a Disney legend named Floyd Norman. It's called Floyd Norman Animated Life. He was kind enough to do the poster for that film. He was kind enough to sit down and do an extensive interview for a documentary that I'm making right now about another great Star Wars artist named Greg Hildebrand, who you had on the show, who sadly passed away last year. Drew is just a kind and generous person, and he loves art. Loved it his whole life. He was painting and drawing as an infant. I mean, his earliest memories are painting and drawing. So this is something that it was just a part of him, that like the pencil and the paintbrush was just an extension of him. He truly loved art.
Erik, did he ever talk to you about things like legacy and how he might like to be remembered?
It's interesting. We never got to that, but I do know that he did love, in terms of the documentary, that there was a film about him that would always be there for people to see. And that the fact that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford and Michael J. Fox and all these people wanted to sit down and talk about his artwork, and that there was a record of that. And I think the thing he wanted the most with his art is that it made people happy. He wanted that art to always be out there and just bring a smile to people's faces, inspire people, make them happy. And it's extremely sad that my friend Drew is gone. But the one great thing is all this art that he left behind, all this art that will continue to inspire people and entertain people for generations.
Since this is a Star Wars podcast, I want to ask you a good Star Wars question, something that a lot of our listeners probably know, but maybe they've never heard it quite to the level of detail you might be able to provide. So, yes, Drew Struzan, an incredible artist, the attention to detail, amazing. Probably the guy that knows, as we said, Harrison Ford's face, every line of it better than Calista Flockhart. But there was one instance where accuracy was not was not shown. And this is, I'm showing this because this is one of my all-time favorite Star Wars posters. I have vivid memories of seeing this in the hallways of the theater. This is the teaser poster for Return of the Jedi. You know, the saga continues. The big Darth Vader helmet is in the center, and then you see a smaller portrait of Vader and Luke fighting. And you don't have to look too closely to see that it's Luke with the red lightsaber and Vader with the blue. Now, Erik, you know, as Star Wars fans, there were probably all kinds of different fan theories going on at the time. This is proof Darth Vader is going to turn good and Luke's going to be a bad guy or whatnot. What did Drew tell you, and what did you learn about how this happened?
Oh, this is great because he told me all about the making of this poster, and the reason why Luke has a red lightsaber and Darth Vader has a blue lightsaber is he thought it looked better on the eye. It's literally just an artistic choice. It had nothing to do with the story or the plot of the movie. He just said, oh, visually it looks better this way in terms of the color palette. So it's strictly just like an artist's choice. I love the fact that George Lucas let it go out like that. He didn't ask them to change it, which is amazing. And what is so funny is that they had a show of Drew's artwork where George Lucas allowed the original painting of this to be shown in there.
Oh, wow.
And so the light had gotten to it. And so both the lightsabers were white because the color had faded. So he told George, I'll repaint those lightsabers for you. Do you want them to be how they originally were, or do you want me to do them the right way? And George said, no, put them how they originally were. He wants it how it's originally painted.
Oh, wow.
So he actually repainted those lightsabers purposely the wrong colors again.
That's great.
But I love that painting too. Yeah, that's
a good one.
Yeah. It's that's one of my favorite Star Wars ones. And it was interesting when I interviewed George Lucas, I asked him to highlight one of his favorite Star Wars posters, and he picked the circus poster as one that he thought really stood out as one of his all-time favorites, which is a really unique poster, you know.
I spotted it at Skywalker Ranch in the main house.
Yep.
It's in the you open the door to go to the basement to the editing suites down there, and it's the first thing you see when you open the door. It's just on the wall opposite of the door, and I think it's a rough draft, actually, of the poster itself because the colors aren't all there. So maybe it was like a test printing thing or something like that.
What's interesting is Drew actually did this painting with another artist named Charlie White. And so Charlie White does the robots and Darth Vader, and Drew did the likenesses. Now, the reason why the poster looks like this is because when they originally did the painting, they didn't leave enough room for the credits to go at the bottom. So it was too small. So they had to make the painting bigger. And so they added Obi-Wan to the side, made it look like the poster was wild-boarded and had faded. And they totally had to do that because they didn't leave enough room at the bottom for the credits block. So a mistake ended up turning into a really unique poster. But I thought it was really cool that George wanted to highlight this one as a one that he loved, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it's one I love, and I have in my just right outside this door, actually hanging on the wall.
Cool.
You know, the classic, it's just known as the circus poster. So if you're wondering what we're talking about and listening to the audio podcast, just go ahead and Google that Star Wars circus poster, Drew Struzan, bing, bang, boom, there it is. But it's the one that looks like there's it's like, playbills stuck to a fence, and there's, something else behind it that happens to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Just, post no bills kind of thing,
Well, it's funny because this is the only Star Wars poster that takes place on planet Earth, I think, because it's literally a Star Wars movie poster on the wall. So it doesn't even take place in a galaxy far, far away. It takes place like in your neighborhood.
Yeah, on my bedroom wall.
Down the block a long time ago, 2 blocks away. Hey, tell us a little bit about this Greg Hildebrandt documentary you currently have in development.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Greg Hildebrandt is another amazing artist and another great man who I was lucky enough to film with and become friends with. He did one of the most famous Star Wars posters from the original film, the original release. And as well as a ton of great art over the years. He did the poster for Clash of the Titans. He's done a lot of work for Marvel and DC, a lot of Lord of the Rings artwork. But yeah, I was lucky enough to film with him in the last years of his life, film a lot of extensive interviews. I'm in post-production on it now. We've interviewed a lot of great people for the film, like Drew Struzan, like Phil Tippett, Joe Quesada, Walt Simonson, William Stout. There's a lot of great people in the film. And we can use all your support. You know, these films are independently made. They're not made through any kind of studio system, but it's really important to me to celebrate these artists that I love and I grew up on, and to get their stories while they're here. And
so how can Rebel Force Radio listeners help support the film and make sure it gets out there? Is there any kind of crowdfunding or anything going on, or do they contact you directly if somebody wants to put their money where their mouth is?
Thank you so much. Actually, we're thinking about doing crowdfunding soon for the finishing fund, so I'll definitely stay in touch about that. But you can follow the progress on the film at Greg Hildebrandt Documentary on Facebook. And any support would be great, even just spreading the word about Greg and his art, and that this film is in production. And Drew, the man behind the poster, is available to stream now. And then if you haven't seen it already, you will learn a lot about Drew and his life and his career. And there's a lot of amazing people in the film. And thank you guys for not only celebrating Star Wars, but celebrating all the people who have contributed to the Star Wars over the years, especially these illustrators who I think have added so much to the experience of the movies and have added so much to pop culture and to remembering the movies and reliving the movies. And this artwork is a part of our lives. So thank you for highlighting.
That's great, Eric. You know, the same could be said for documentary guys. I said documentary, because I want to say refer to yourself in your official title as a...
I guess I'm a documentarian. I'm a documentary filmmaker.
That means that you don't eat meat, right? Is that what that... No.
What was that?
I said that means that you don't eat meat, right? Documentarian.
Oh, no, I eat meat. I eat big fat steaks, which I shouldn't because I'm quite large. So I shouldn't.
Well, I'd love to hang out with you at a steakhouse some night and just talk about Star Wars and all the great artists that have worked and just talk movies in general. But we'll be looking out for the Greg Hildebrandt documentary, and maybe we'll have you back on Rebel Force Radio once that finally premieres, and we can talk all about Greg and his wonderful career and the great contributions he made to Star Wars beyond the film poster. Yeah, man. You're the best, Eric. And of course, we consider you a friend of the show as well. So,
I love your show. I listen to it. I love your show. I listen to it. You do a lot of great things for the Star Wars community. And I want to thank you again for having Greg Hildebrandt on your show and talking about his art. And I want to thank you for always talking about Drew and having Drew on your show. And thank you for all you do for the Star Wars community.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it very much. And let's be in touch, okay?
Okay, awesome.
All right.
You guys have a good one. Thanks.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Take it easy, Eric.
All right. There goes Erik Sharkey, Drew, the man behind the poster. I revisited this just recently, knowing that Erik was going to be on. And it's one of those documentaries you can just drop the needle anywhere on the scrubber. And there's something fascinating, interesting going on. And the luminaries, Spielberg, Lucas, Harrison Ford, Guillermo del Toro, all of them just
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. I was looking at that. I was like, hey, where'd Gutenberg? How'd he get in here? No, I mean, he's Steve Gutenberg.
Police Academy rocked.
Right. But no, it's a who's who of the stuff that we grew up on, especially Gen Xers and 80s and 90s and all of that. So it's an awesome doc. You can find it wherever you can find document. I found it on YouTube, so you can check it out there as well.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us here this week. Big thanks to Erik Sharkey for dropping by and sharing his memories of the late, great Drew Struzan. And that, once again, that documentary, Drew, the man behind the poster. Check it out. Also, as I said at the top of the show, thanks to Matt Rashid for being our sort of our surprise guest co-host last week, which was really just a public broadcast of public release of the RFR Q&A, which you can hear on Patreon. So check us out over on patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, where you get the weekly full show video. So as we were talking to Erik about some of these posters of Drew's, we were looking at the posters. So it's just another way to enjoy Rebel Force Radio. Exclusive podcast, as I mentioned, you can't get anywhere else, and a fantastic community of Star Wars fans. You hear many of them on the RFR voicemails and our after shows. You can follow us on all of the socials. We, of course, are on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. X. We're on Instagram, and the website for all things and everything, Rebel Force Radio, rebelforceradio.com. Please keep listening. Please keep sharing the word with friends, the Star Wars fans in your life, about the Rebel Force Radio podcast. We appreciate it so much. So please subscribe if you're a podcatcher of choice allows you to do so. We love to have those subscriptions. We also love to have those reviews. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
And that'll do it for us this week. We will see you next week for all new Rebel Force Radio. Until then, for RFR, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
That sounds nasty.